Good morning, everyone. Today
Good morning.
we have with us Dr. Ashaq Hussain. Sir is Associate Professor Agronomy, MRCFC, Khudwani, Anantnag, SKUAST-Kashmir. Sir is going to deliberate on the topic of weed management in fodder crops and pastures. Sir, you are visible and audible, and your presentation is also visible. Please start, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your introduction. Let me add a little bit to the introduction. I am basically alumni of SKUAST-Kashmir. My UG and PG is from SKUAST-Kashmir, and my PhD in agronomy is from Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and almost 15 years of experience I have in this research mostly, and to some extent I also done some teaching. Though I have dealt with the cereal crops, that's rice particularly and maize to some extent in my research topic, but still I have some fair idea about the weed management in different crops, which is not much different as when we consider different types of crops. So the topic allotted to me by the organizers is the weed management in fodder crops and pastures. And let us start this topic. I'm sure that the screen is visible to all of you, and my voice is also coming to you fairly well. Am I audible to everyone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So when we talk about the fodder crops or forage crops, the first and the foremost thing that comes to our mind is the large cattle population of India. According to the 20th livestock census, which was done in 2019, the livestock population has reached to around 536 million and around 302 million, or we can say 303 million cattle, buffalo, and mithun. And this makes the India the number one in livestock and cattle population around the world. But the problem is of the productivity. When we see the milk productivity or meat productivity, it is much lower when we see the world averages, or particularly the Western countries. And the basic problem in India is the lack of proper balanced nutrition for our cattle. And in the recent past, also we have come to know that our milk quality is much better than the European types of the cattle. And now the Brazilian people are using our own cattle for the better quality milk, and they are even yielding better than the exotic species of the cattle. So my point here is that unless and until we produce enough quality fodder in our country, the milk sufficiency or the meat self-sufficiency cannot be achieved. And the scenario, when we see the scenario of the 2015, at that time we had 21%, 26%, and 34% deficit in dry fodder, green fodder, and concentrates. So the foremost the duty of the agricultural organizations and the government is to fulfill that gap, and so that we become self-sufficient in fodder, and then ultimately the different types of the milk products and meats and other commodities that are essential for our food and nutritional security. And the Standing Committee on Agriculture has done some survey on the deficiency of these fodders, whether dry, green, or concentrates, and they have arrived at some of the figures. When we see the deficit of dry, green, and concentrate fodders, it is 23% and 32% and 36% in the year 2000, in the current year. And when the projections were made, they found that for dry fodder deficiency will continue and will reach around 21%. It will lessen to some extent, but when we see the green fodder deficiency, it will go from 32 to 40% in the next 5 years. This is because of the increase in the population of the cattle also, and to meet the balanced nutrition, so that we have to diversify our cropping systems, and manage our fodder crops well so as to meet out that deficiency. Similarly, we are also deficit in the concentrates, and by 2025, the concentrate deficiency will be around 38%. So this data is a little bit older, and it varies a little bit from the earlier data which was given by the standing committee. This was published in this Handbook of Agriculture published by ICAR. And here when we see the green and dry fodder deficiency, they have reported higher amounts of deficiency by 2025, which is around 65% in green fodder, and it is in terms of dry fodder, we will be deficient by around 25%. So moving on to the main fodder crops that we grow in India as per the area. The topmost fodder crop that is grown in India is the jawar, that is sorghum. Sorghum are popularly known as the cherry. It is around 2.6 million hectares. Then it is followed by the berseem, and then we have the Leucerne, that's alfalfa. And the other crops, major fodder crops grown in India are the bajra, which is pearl millet. And then we have the makka, that's the maize also, which is one of the major fodder crops grown in India. So far as the fodders are concerned, we generally use the term fodder and forage. I searched the literature to find out the differences, but some of the literature reports that they are almost same. But in some definitions, it is written that fodder is any crop that is fed to the cattle in stall feeding and is cultivated formally in the field. But forage is that when we grow any crop and then let the animals graze in the field directly in the pasture, and that kind of crop is known as the forage crop. But there are slightly some of the differences also in the literature. Dr. T.K. Das in his book reports that the fodder is any crop that's actually fed to the cattle directly as grain, and forage he has referred to as when it is fed to the cattle in the dry form. But I agree with the definition that states that fodder is any crop that is fed to, that's used in the stall feeding, and forage is that when we let the animals to directly graze in the field. In India, the area under the fodder crops has been around static over the last so many years. It is around 8.4 million hectares. And when we see the constraints of the fodder crops that are grown in the country, apart from the other constraints such as the area allocation and then the fertility and the proper management of the crops, weeds are also one of the important constraints that reduce the productivity of the fodder and forage crops. When we search the literature and we see how much is the yield reduction in fodder crops when weeds are not checked properly, weeds are not managed properly. For example, if we see maize, the different researchers have reported different figures, but on an average, we can see that there is a 37% yield reduction if the weeds are not properly managed. Similarly, when we see berseem, it is around 23 to 28%, and so on and so forth. This type of reduction due to the weeds is also leads to the reduction in the seed production when any fodder crop is let to mature and produce the seeds. Similarly, the green biomass yield will be reduced, and finally when it is allowed to mature for the production of the seeds, the seed yield will be also reduced. Here, Vasnik has reported that if the weeds are not checked, there will be a reduction in 38 to 44% in the wheat in the berseem seed production. Similarly, even up to 95% yield loss can be noticed in Leucerne crop if the weeds are not unchecked. And similarly, oats, coffee, sorghum, bajra, different figures have been reported in the literature. Overall, the almost 33 to 50% yield loss will be expected if weeds are not checked in the fodder crops. Although, if the fodder crops are managed properly and sufficient seed rates are used, in most of the time we do not take any precautions or do not take any practices to control the weeds in the fodder crops. But But if the weeds are left unchecked, they will definitely reduce the yield as well as reduce the quality of the fodder that we feed to the cattle, because the presence of the noxious weeds or the harmful weeds inside the fodder crop will reduce the palatability and digestibility as well as the nutrient availability to the farm animals when they are mixed with our fodder crops. When we see the economic impact of the harmful or poisonous weeds that are present in the fodder or in the pastures, they may lead to the death of the livestock, abortion, birth defects, weight loss, or sometimes lengthening of the calving period, and then decreased fertility, decreased immune response, decreased function, and definitely that will finally lead to the, if severe toxicity is there, it can lead to the death of the animals. And not only this, the addition of the harmful weeds, poisonous weeds to the fodder or forage will result in the reduction in the quality of the milk and quality of the meat as well. It sometimes adds very undesirable flavors to the milk as well as to the meat. There are a large number of weeds that have been reported to be poisonous to the cattle, livestock. For example, this hemlock Conium maculatum, it widely grows in Kashmir. If it gets mixed or our cattle feed on this kind of poison hemlock, it can lead to various symptoms of bad health, for example, frothing in the mouth and dilated pupils, respiratory failure. And if severe poisoning occurs, then it can lead also to the death. Similarly, Cicuta maculata is another poisonous weed that can cause the pulse, increase in the pulse rate, rapid pulse, bloating, or convulsions, and even the respiratory failure and the death. For example, the bracken fur is a pteridophyte, Pteridium aquilinum, and this is also very poisonous and can result in the loss of joints, loss of appetite, weakness, and excitability, paralysis. Similarly, horsetail. Horsetail is a scoring type of weed, sometimes used by the people for cleaning teeth. It is called equistum. And if this also results in some of the abnormalities in the animals, sometimes the animals can even suffer, horses can suffer from vitamin B1 deficiency. Cockleber is also widely reported as the poisonous weed. It is a seed that capsule sticks to the fur of the animals and is carried to the faraway places. It results in liver damage and also can cause the cardiac abnormalities and even death if it's up to in the present. It is a toxin is present in the body up to 0.7% of the body weight. Then it can cause to the death of the animal. Similarly, there are numerous examples of the weeds, for example, pigweed, Amaranthus, leafy spurge, euphorbia, and then buttercups, ranunculus, which widely grows in our orchards here in Kashmir. Ranunculus, that's Ranunculus acris, buttercup, tall buttercup, and many other species of the buttercup, Ranunculus muricatus, Ranunculus arvensis, and then Ranunculus, that one of the species grows in the water, aquatic type of Ranunculus. So these are the different ranunculus species that can be poisonous to the cattle. There are some more examples of the harmful weeds. For example, pokeweed, marsh marigold. Then we have lupin, different types of lupins, Hypericum perforatum. Then we have Solanum nigrum. It grows in our vegetable gardens also. Then we have datura. Datura is widely known. This weed that is very poisonous, although some medicines are also extracted from this species. Then we have cockle, then cockleber. Cockleber I have discussed. So these are different species that are very much poisonous to our cattle. And then sometimes the admixture of the Coronopus didymus with the berseem or fodder maize or sorghum, that can also result in the palatability of the green fodder that is fed to the cattle. So when the palatability is less, then there will be definitely wastage of the fodder. Is my voice coming to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If you sometimes any of the participants wants a brief interruption, there's no problem, so that I may also be able to know that there is a two-way interaction. Otherwise, sometimes I feel that maybe my voice is not coming to you, to the audience.
Uh, so we will take question answer session at the end.
Okay, nice, nice. Yeah, it will last for 1 hour. It should last for 1 hour or more.
Uh, we can adjust it 15-20 minutes more. No of them.
Okay.
Actually, we have
So,
only 2 sessions today, so there's no problem.
so when we see the cultivated fodders in India, particularly in the subtropical and tropical conditions, the most important weeds that have been surveyed, there are papers by Mukherjee from Indian Veterinary Research Institute, Anantnag. He has done some work on the reporting some of these weed species that are prevalent in the different types of the fodder crops, particularly in maize, cowpea, and berseem. Trianthema partulacastrum or Trianthema monogyna is one of the worst weeds that affects the fodder production. And then we have the other weeds, that is Celosia argentea. Then we have that is present in the, that grows with the fodder sorghum. Then we have broad-leaved weeds, also Coccinea grandis, that grows in the maize as well as in the sorghum. Similarly, we have some of the sedge, Cypress rotundus, one of the world's worst weeds, that grows in the different types of the fodder crops. We have Coronopus didymus, Rumex, and Psychoremintibus. Psychoremintibus is a very problematic weed associated with the berseem. So the problem with these types of the weeds is that, for example, Trianthema, when we see, it produces seeds throughout the year, almost from the summer up to the late November, and 80% of the seeds produced by Trianthema germinate during the current year itself. So the continuous batches of the weeds are produced because of this continuous germination, and flushes of Trianthema partulacastrum will come up if it is not controlled. And number two, it produces good number of seeds per plant, 224 to 504. Similarly, when we see Celosia, it produces around 1,700 to 3,500 seeds per plant in a year. And similarly, Coccinea produces around 3,000 to 4,500 seeds per plant. And this prolificity of these weeds in general results in very difficult makes them very difficult to control because of this prolificity. Number one. Number two, some of the seeds become dormant. Even if we apply the herbicides, it will not affect the dormant seeds, and the dormant seeds will come up later in the time period. And similarly, the longevity, the seeds can stay viable in the soil system for a long time, and that will result in the persistence of the weeds. So longevity, prolificity, and the dormancy results in this difficult situation that we are very unable almost to fully control the weeds. And that's why we say 1 year of weeding results in the 7 years of 1 year of seeding results in the 7 years of weeding, even more than that. For example, if the longevity of a weed seed in the soil is 25 years, the seed can come up 25 years later. But the general statement goes that 1 year of seeding results in the 7 years of weeding. Then when we see the wide use of herbicides has resulted in many problems around the world, particularly in this herbicide resistant weeds that have risen in the different parts of the world, around 400 to 500 species. And then the herbicides are also environmentally not safe. They sometimes result in the presence of the residue in the soil, not only, but also in the crop itself. And that presence of the residue in the crop may adversely affect the animal health and finally the human health. That's why nowadays we lay more emphasis on the ecological management practices. And sometimes we also recommend that we should shift to the organic agriculture, which includes organic fodder production and organic meat and milk production as well. The ecological methods includes that we should have very vigorous crops that have a very fast germination as well as a fast early growth to cover up the ground. And then sometimes continuously growing a single crop results in the build up of the weed seed bank, and that weed seed bank becomes then later on very difficult to control. Then then we have the crop rotation. When we break the cycle of a particular crop that results in the promotion of a particular weed, then we by crop rotation we can break that cycle. Similarly, leaving the soil idle will expose it to the sun and rain, then that will result in the germination of the weeds and cover up the soil completely with the weeds. Then during the intervening period of the two main crops, we can have a cover crop, particularly a leguminous crop, that will result in the increase in the soil health as well as in the production of the biomass, to increase the soil organic carbon and to increase the fodder supply. Then we have organic mulches also. Whatever organic residue we have, we should apply it to the soil, at least up to 30% if it's available. Then nowadays we have plastic mulches. Then we should also conserve the enemies of the natural pests, natural enemies of the pests that are present in the farm. Then tillage. Sometimes it's also reported that conservation tillage helps in the reduction of the weeds build-up, particularly the annual weeds. Sometimes the perennial weeds, the intensity may increase. Then mowing and cutting tools, mowers and cutting tools should be used regularly to cut the weeds and stop the seed production at least. And when we regularly do mowing, the reserves that are present in the underground parts of the perennial seeds also get reduced, and that's why this can result in the death of the underground parts of the perennial weeds. Then sometimes rollers and roll crimpers are also used to cover the crop for converting the mature crops into the in situ mulch. Then we have the heat treatment of the heat through flame weeders. Then we have the certified organic herbicides also available, certified by OMRI. Then we have bioherbicides. There's a fungal herbicide sometimes that kill the plants. Then management of the soil microflora also is helpful to control, for example, the trichoderma species. Similarly, we have the allelopathic effect. It's very important. Sometimes one crop is allelopathic to the weeds and results in the reduction of the weed growth. Then we have biological control methods, particularly in the Parthenium in India. We have tried in these aquatic weeds. That is the problematic aquatic weeds in the Neocatina brucei in the water hyacinths. Then we have the clear plastic mulches. One is the black plastic mulch and another one is the clear plastic mulch. Clear plastic mulch results in the soil solarization as it builds up the soil temperature. Then apart from these ecological methods, actually the most important thing is to prevent, and they take the preventive methods into consideration before taking up the cultivation of any of the crops. In the prevention, we have to actually use the clean seeds, use clean fields, prevent the entry of the weed seeds into the fields, and then we can also take alternate winter and summer crops. Then we can alternate grain crops with the root crops, then nutrient depleting crops with the nutrient building crops, inclusion of lay phase, then disruption of the regeneration ratios as achieved by the crop rotation. Then we have to also promote the multifaceted approach so as to reduce the entry of the weeds and build up of the weeds in our crop fields. So for that matter, the machinery, whatever goes into the field, the animals that come into the field, even the human beings, where sometimes the seeds get adhered to the cloths or the fur of the animals or to their hooves. All the machinery and the animals should be very cleanly maintained so as to prevent the entry of the weeds from the fences as well. Then we have some of the cultural management options to reduce the weed population in the fodder crops. For example, high seed rate creates a smothering effect. For example, generally in oats crop, we recommend 100 kg per hectare. At the same time, we also recommend 100 kg of the seed in wheat also for grain. But here, if the wheat problem is very, very high, then we can use 125 kg or even 150 kg of the oats seed to create a smothering effect so that the light does not fall on the ground. The crop grows very quickly and covers the ground and prevents the emergence of the weeds.
Hello.
Yeah, madam. Yeah, please. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. There was some voice between. Hello. So somebody wants to ask something?
It was an accidental unmute.
Okay. No problem. So high seed rate can be to reduce the weed emergence and build up of the weeds due to this by the smothering effect. Then another approach, very good approach, is the sowing of the intercrops in between two rows of the fodder crop. For example, in maize or in sorghum, we can very safely take cowpea. Two rows of one row of maize and one row of cowpea, or two rows of maize and one row of cowpea. In different proportions, we can follow that one. And this helps in the covering of the ground, because during the early crop growth is very slow. Until the time the crop grows fully, the weeds have already emerged. But if it is covered by an intercrop, for example, a cowpea or soybean, then the space between two rows of maize, for example, if it is 75 centimeters, is also at the same time concurrently covered by the intercrop. And that results in the interruption of the light falling on the ground, and thereby reduces the germination of the weeds. Even if the weeds have come up, the even if the weeds have come up, the light will be intercepted by the main crop, by the intercrop, and then the there will be reduction in the biomass accumulation of the weeds. Then growing berseem has been also tested with the gobi sarson, and then that has resulted in the reduction in the growth of the Coronopus diademus. Similarly, there are many more options. For example, berseem can be grown with the ryegrass, that is a cereal cereal. Ryegrass is a very vigorous crop and produces a large amount of biomass and results in the reduction of the growth. Basically, the earlier vigor of either the main crop or the intercrop is very, very important. So as to reduce, smother the growth of the weeds. And if it is slow, then there's every chance that the weeds may overtake the crop. So the intercropping is one of the ecological options, cultural options available with us to increase the fodder production by around 20 to 30%, and also to reduce the weed growth. If the intercrop is generally used as the legume crop, then it also results in the building the soil health by addition of not only the organic carbon but also the nitrogen that is synthesized by the legumes in their root system, that's nodules. Sorghum plus cowpea and Napier hybrid, that's bajra plus cowpea, followed by berseem throughout the year, are the excellent examples of the intensifying the fodder production, and besides controlling the weeds very properly through ecological approaches without any consumption of the herbicide. So when we move to the chemical options available with us for the maize and sorghum, because they are they're related crops belonging to the family Poaceae and almost having the similar growth habit, then the atrazine is the time-tested herbicide for the both of these crops, and used as the rate of 1 to 2 kilograms active ingredient per hectare, depending on the soil condition and organic matter content of the soil, temperature, and many other factors. Then we can use a combination of the herbicides also, that is atrazine as the pre-emergence and metolachlor. Then we have Post-emergence options also. Atrazine has both pre-emergence, emergent, and post-emergent action. Then we have 2,4-diamine, 0.5 kg active ingredient per hectare, because this will control the broadleaf weeds. It is selective for the broadleaf weeds, but when there is an intercrop in between, we cannot use 2,4-D. Similarly, we have bromoxynil, bentazone, pyrazosulfotol, and plus bromoxynil in combination in different combinations and at recommended doses. And these are the different chemical options available with us for controlling the weeds in the maize and sorghum. And then fodder crops we have already discussed. Maize can be combined with the cowpea to increase the yield by 25% as reported by Azim. Similarly, we can have maize pears plus cowpea, and then this will result in the increased fodder production. A large number of workers have reported maize plus cowpea. Similarly, sweet sorghum plus field bean can be used as an intercrop situation that with 2:1 ratio. That will also increase the dry matter production as well as the green fodder yield. Similarly, maize can be intercropped with lub, that's Vishafaba, and then wheat can be intercropped with the clover to increase the fodder. Sometimes wheat is also used in many parts of the world as fodder, and there are certain varieties of wheat suitable for fodder. Then we have sorghum plus cowpea will also result in increasing the yield by 23%. Moving on to the different papers that we have consulted regarding the use of the herbicides in the fodder maize. Atrazine is again the time-tested herbicide that has resulted in the good management of the weeds, followed by one hand weeding, as reported by Sanodia et al. 2013. Atrazine at the rate of 1 kg active ingredient as a pre-emergent plus 30 hand weeding for at 30 days after sowing has resulted in good control and good yield from the maize crop used as this. And one point I want to tell here to the participants is that whatever herbicides we will test in the maize used for grain purpose, same herbicides can be used for maize when used as a fodder, because the crop is same, physiology is same, only the end uses are different. So whatever herbicides we are testing in the grain maize can also be used safely in the fodder maize. For example, nowadays we are focusing on tembotrione, tomparazone, chalcotron. These are different types of the new herbicides tested over the last 10 to 15 years in India. Around the world, it has been over now for 20 years that these herbicides have been used, these trione herbicides. But in India, in over the last 5 or 8 years, we are doing some research on these new herbicides, and they are proving really best in controlling the different kinds of the weeds. For example, atrazine plus toprimazone at 0.025 kilograms active ingredient per hectare has proved as a very efficient strategy for controlling the weeds in the maize fodder. Similarly, sometimes in zero-tillage system we use glyphosate, and then followed by atrazine plus halosulfuron has given a wonderful weed control and good yield from the maize fodder. Similarly, metolachlor can be combined with the pendimethalin I discussed already, and that has resulted in good control of the weeds in the fodder maize. Here some of the data also we have included here, and the data reveals that good grain yield and store yield has been obtained from the application of tembotrione plus atrazine, which was almost comparable or at par with the hand weeding at 20 and 40 days after sowing. That's tembotrione at the rate of 105 plus 250 grams of atrazine has given a good control of the weeds in the maize. But here the adjuvant has been used as also been to reduce the toxicity and increase the efficacy of the herbicide. Moving on to the another important fodder crop, that's oats. It is really important in Kashmir Valley, particularly. Although at the national level it stands at 5th or 6th in number in terms of the area, but here in Kashmir Valley, this is a very important fodder crop that is grown in the rice fields. When we harvest rice in the month of September, and then its fruit sowing date is around October, in mid of October. Then here also people use very high seed rates, 125 to 150 kilograms per hectare, and that results in the smothering of the weeds, and also results in the increase in the quality of the fodder, because when we sow the crop in a very dense way, then the fiber production of the fiber that is formed inside the plant tissue reduces, and the fodder remains a little bit soft when we compare it to when lesser plant populations are kept in the field. So far as the weed management practices are concerned, generally people do not follow much weed management practices or herbicides in the oats crop because of this smothering nature of the crop. And number two, whatever weeds come up inside the fodder crops, they are also harvested by the farmers and fed to the cattle. Although some of the weeds are good in nutrition, but some of the weeds, as we have discussed, are not good so far as their nutritional quality, or some of the anti-quality parameters are sometimes poisonous to our crops. Here 2,4-D at 0.37 kg, that's 370 kilograms per hectare, and followed by initially actually the weeder mulch was used, and then at 6 weeks 2,4-D spray was given to control the broadleaf weeds. Then in oats also we can take up very safely an intercrop. If the oats is sown in rows by a seed drill, the pea is the most suitable crop, being the rabi crop, that can be grown along with the oats. If the pea is also harvested as a fodder, then it will definitely increase the quality of the fodder because of its high protein content. Then there are certain, as I told you earlier, that there are certain varieties of the wheat that have been bred for fodder purposes. VLGU 829 is a fodder, grain cum fodder type of dual purpose variety, and it is reduces the Phalaris minor, which is a very problematic weed in the oats crop. Yeah. So sometimes yes, please. Yeah, participants, kindly, whosoever has put your microphone in the on position, kindly mute it, so that
please mute your microphones.
Yeah, because it will lead to distraction, and it will
I'll remove the people who do not mute the microphone.
yeah, because it creates a lot of disturbance and distractions.
Please continue, sir. Please continue.
Sometimes we also use certain types of the varieties, because in rice also much experimentation has been done. When we grow different types of genotypes of a particular crop, they respond differently to the growth of the weeds. They respond different because the reasons can be many. Either it can be vigorous, it can produce more amount of biomass in the early period of the growth, or it can also have some allelopathic effect on the weeds. An experiment conducted on the oat genotypes, here 5 or 6 oat genotypes were tested for their response to the growth of the different kinds of weeds, particularly rumex, melanotes, and chenopodium. Here the experimenter has found that JHO 99-99-2 has proved the best in respect of the green fodder yield and dry fodder yield, as well as the response to it has suppressed the weeds, and that has resulted in the lower weed biomass production in the case of JHO 99-2, as is evident in the total weed population plants per square meter in JHO 992, whereas the green biomass as well as the dry biomass was also lesser in case of this genotype, and because of its higher yield, it is desirable to take up this kind of oats if the weed problem is very persistent and severe in a field. So the point here is to suggest that the different types of the genotypes respond differently to the weed growth and weed populations. Sometimes if a genotype is available that has an adverse effect on the weed growth and weed populations, then that type of genotype is desirable wherever we have the severe weed problems. Then moving on to the different types of the herbicides, pendimethalin is a worldwide use, and almost in most of the crops, many crops, pendimethalin is applied as a pre-emergence herbicide. And here in Kashmir, pendimethalin has been tested vis-a-vis butachlor, and pendimethalin was found as superior herbicide when compared to the butachlor. Similarly, the population density and then the broadleaf weeds and sedges are lesser when we opt for the zero-tilled oats. So tillage has also a bearing on the emergence and establishment of the weeds in different fodder crops. Then prosulfuron, 10 in combination with glyphosate has also been used under the zero-till systems to control the weeds in the oats crop. Some years before, J.R. Whitcomb from England had visited our university, and he recommended that you should grow the winter rye CKL cereal. Winter rye is actually hybrid plant, and it's used as a fodder as well. Because of its vigorous early growth, production of the huge biomass, this crop is a fodder crop, but this crop can be used as a strategy to control the weeds because of its smothering effect and because of the vigorous growth and huge biomass production. So rye can be used, particularly in the temperate conditions. It can be used to control wild oat, dandelion, common lamb, squatters, red pigweed, Canada thistle, Silsium arvens, then quackgrass, and this has been reported widely in the literature that rye can be used as a weed killer. So this mature plant residue can also be added to the soil to control. The mature plant residues can also be added to the soil to control the weeds that will act as a mulch. And there are also reports that the CKL cereal, that's rye, produces certain allelopathic compounds that have an adverse effect on the weeds and therefore a reduced weed growth in the rye plots. So moving on to one of the most important after sorghum, if we see the area is very high in berseem under Indian conditions. So berseem is also, when we see the tall crops, for example, sorghum or maize, the berseem is more susceptible to the weed infestations. Yes, please. The weed, because of its prostrate nature and slow early growth, it is susceptible to many varied types of the weed flora, particularly Psychorium intybus, Coronopus, then Anagalis, Chenopodium, almost all types of the rabi weeds that grow in Indian conditions in North India are found in the berseem as well. The almost similar type of weeds you will find in the wheat fields, and then how to control these types of the weeds in the berseem fields. There are different approaches. One approach is to have slightly higher seed rate. That can be one approach. Then we can also take up the herbicides approach. That means we can apply a pre-emergence and later on a post-emergence herbicide. And then we can also have some cultural and preventive measures against the different kinds of the weeds that are present in that grow in the berseem field. For example, Stale seedbed. Stale seedbed, we know that we promote the weed growth by applying irrigation, and then when a lot of weeds germinate in the field, then is immediately at seedling stage of those, we go for repeated plowings to burn all those weeds, and that kind of approach is called as a stale seedbed. Then the seeds should be very clean. Mostly the weed seeds are associated with the berseem, that is Psychorium. It's a satellite weed of berseem, and if it is present in the seed itself, then it will spread definitely in the field. So the seed should be clean. Then high seed rate, as I told you, is one of the approaches to have a smothering effect on the weeds when they are expected to come or when they are prevalent in that particular area. Then application of flucloarelin or pendimethalin is the most popular herbicide that can be used as a pre-emergence or pre-planted incorporation. Then it is very important to dip the berseem seed in 10% common salt solution. That's by adding the salt, we increase the density of the water. Then here, the lighter seeds of the Psychorium intybus, or even sometimes the Cuscuta or Coronapus didymus, they float on the surface of the water, and then they are removed safely. And then at the bottom settles the berseem seed. And this type of cleaning process is recommended particularly for the berseem to remove the Psychorium intybus. Sometimes we recommend this type of process in the rice also to remove the diseased weeds, because diseased and half-filled seeds are also light and they come up on the surface of the water. Then another approach, ecological or cultural approach, is through crop rotations and intercropping systems. This we have discussed earlier also. Rotation with rye or a rotation with oats can be taken up to reduce the wheat seed bank. Then turning the field to the oats, berseem field to the oats will reduce the populations of the Coronapus and Rumex as well as Psychorium intybus, most prevalent weeds present in the berseem crop. Then we have the other approaches that are present, that are available with us, that is the intercropping system. Maize is intercropped with sometimes cowpea and followed by Leucerne plus oats and mustard. This is a year-round production system recommended for hill and northern region. Then we have hybrid bajra plus velvet green followed by berseem plus mustard. So even mustard can be mixed up with the berseem to have an intercrop or a mixed crop. Then some of the tarai soils, we have maize plus cowpea followed by toria and oats. But different cropping systems have been recommended and crop rotations have been recommended at different parts of the India. This slide has been cited here as an example as to how they rotate different crops or take up the different intercrops to increase the fodder yield and reduce the weed populations. Then from the literature, I came across different chemicals that have been successfully used in the at the rate of 0.1110 kilograms per hectare, 5 kilogram per hectare after the first cut. After the first cut has been reported to reduce the weed populations. And here another example by Kothale has reported oxaflorphine at 0.1 plus imazethophyr with a slightly reduced dose, that's 0.1, has reduced the weed density in the berseem crop. Sometimes imazethopyr and butachlorose are also reported to have a successful effect on the weed control in case of berseem. Pendimethalin is also a tested herbicide in combination with the imazethopyr after the first cut, and then in berseem has also been reported to be successful. So generally, if you see that without imazethopyr, it will be difficult to control the broad spectrum of weeds, grasses, and broadleaf weeds in the berseem crop. Here, some data is also available where the application of 0.1 kilogram of imazethopyr active ingredient 20 days after sowing as a post-emergence herbicide has resulted in almost 97% weed control efficiency and evidently increase in the fodder yield of the wheat, and definitely it will result in the higher profitability. Sorry, not in wheat, but in berseem. It will result in the higher profitability of the berseem berseem crop by increasing the fodder production and quality of the berseem. So imidazolpine seems to be one of the very useful option to control the weeds in the this berseem. Another example here that has been given where the oxyfluorophene in combination with the imidazolpine has reduced the populations of the monocot as well as the dicot weeds, and thereby also reducing to a great extent the dry matter production of the weeds and the weed control efficiency. In this case, a combination of imidazolpine plus oxyfluorophene at 0.1 and 0.1 kilogram acre per hectare has resulted in 81% weed control efficiency. Leucerne is also equally important when we see as compared to the berseem. Leucerne crop is infested by a large number of different kinds of weeds, amaranthus, then bindweed, and then we have the solanum, poisonous weed, hibiscus trionum, Calatrop, tribulus, tristis, so on and so forth, and certain grasses, for example, lolium, broom grass, and different kinds of grasses are also reported to be affecting the Leucerne crop. So far as the cultural methods are concerned, the time of sowing is very, very important in case of the successful cultivation of the Leucerne crop as well as to control the weeds. For example, if we sow at a normal depth of 5 to 7 millimeters, and we go for the early sowing in the autumn, then it will give an advantage to the Leucerne crop over the weeds, because in the month of September itself, moisture is high, temperature is also good. The weeds will, the rabi weeds will start germinating. But if you sow a little bit early, say mid-September, the Leucerne crop, then it will definitely have an advantage over the other weeds and will result in the successful production of the crop and reduction in the weed populations. Then sometimes the low NPK can also encourage the undesirable plants. Similarly, the fertility status of the soil should be very, very good, so as to give a stimulus to the crop, selective stimulus to the crop, and that stimulus to the crop will result in the suppression of the weeds. Dodder, that is the Cuscuta species, are very important parasitic weeds present in the Leucerne, and different herbicides have been reported to control that Cuscuta also, and the seeds should be free from the Cuscuta seeds. Generally, in Alfalfa, that is the Leucerne, the pre-plant options before us are APTC, Benefin, Triflorenin, Fluocolin at different doses. And then we have the pre-emergence, that was pre-plant incorporation. Then pre-emergence, pre-plant incorporation is generally taken up in case of the volatile herbicides. When we apply it to the soil, immediately we have to go for the plowing to cover up and reduce the volatilization losses. But if the herbicide is not volatile, then we can apply it as a pre-emergence herbicide. That means after the sowing of the crop, 2 to 3 days or 4 days after the sowing of the crop. But pre-plant incorporation is taken up before the sowing of the crop. Then post-emergence herbicides, we have diclofop-methyl option, and then we have 4-DB and MCPB. Then when we go for multi-cuts, 3 to 4 cuts in either in Leucerne or in berseem, then after in Leucerne, after the first cut, we can apply gramoxone, because here the crop is almost nil. Then the weeds will slowly start coming up. Immediately we have to go for a paraquat application, which is a non-selective herbicide. It will have least effect on the crop because we have already taken up the crop through cut. And similarly, in the establishment, when the pasture is dormant, when the crop is dormant during the winter seasons, metribuzin and hexazinone are the two options before us to have successful control of the weeds in the Leucerne crop. And then some of the points worth note is that the triflorenin has been reported to control the Cuscuta. And then gramoxone, that is the paraquat, is applied after the cutting, after we have a first or second cut to control the weeds, but the weeds should have sufficiently emerged and should be at the seedling stage. That's only, it's a contact post-emergence herbicide, a non-selective herbicide. It will kill only the existing weed population that has already come up. And similarly, the hard grazing can sometimes also have a suppressing effect on the weeds. but too much of grazing will reduce the growth and will weaken the pasture, or will weaken the Leucerne crop. Then 2.4 liters of gramoxone is applicable during the dormancy period also. Then it can be added up with 1 kilogram of active ingredient of atrazine. Then clean and healthy seeds, avoid spray during the frost period, and ensure total coverage of the weeds by the herbicide, and then use clean water, because sometimes the weeds will also come up with the water. And also, if the water is not clean, it will reduce the efficacy of the herbicides that are used by mixing it with the water as a solution. Then moving on to the dodder, that is a Coscuta, a problematic weed in the Leucerne, just as we have the Psychorium in the berseem. This is a parasitic weed. It has a different type of physiology. Pendimethalin and floccularine reduces the germination of the Coscuta. Then it has been reported from several experiments. Pendimethalin at the rate of 100 grams per hectare, the 1000 grams, that is 1 kilogram per hectare, will reduce the application of the will reduce the germination of the seeds when applied at around 1000 grams active ingredient per hectare. Then application of pendimethalin at 14 days after sowing was safe for Leucerne emergence as compared to the application at 7 days. And then probably this might affect the Coscuta emergence. A large number of herbicides across the world have been registered for the use in the Leucerne. For example, these are the reports from the European countries, as well as South Africa. Then we have Snil, Amazonox, Resetobutide, MCBB, Paraquat. A large number of herbicides are available that have been registered for the use in the Leucerne crop. Yes, sorry. Anybody wants to tell something? Then cowpea is also a very important, not only as a pulse, but also a very important fodder crop. That it can be used as a sole crop, and generally it is used as an intercrop. In cowpea, pendimethalin at the rate of 1 to 1.5 kg active ingredient per hectare is used as safely as a pre-emergence herbicide in case of the cowpea. Then we have pendimethalin has been reported by a large number of workers to be successful in case of the weed management in cowpea. Then moving on to the clovers, we have perennial pastures we grow the clovers, that is the red clover or white clover. And then in clovers, pre-plant incorporation of EPTC or benefin, and post-emergence application of pronomide, cethoxidin, and clethodim are the different options before us to control the weeds in clover crops. And then as a post-emergence herbicide, we can have also option of 2,4-D amine salt at 0.5 kilogram active ingredient per hectare. But the researcher or the farmer should be very careful about the toxicity of the 2,4-D if the leaf foliage is much. But if the leaf foliage is not much there present at that point of time, then it will kill only the broadleaf weeds. Then imidazolpine, as I suggested, in case of the berseem, imidazolpine is also useful in case of the clover crops, that is the red clover or the white clover. And then management of the grasslands and the pastures. We have large area under the pastures and grasslands in India also. Then there are different types of the toxic weeds, harmful weeds that grow in these pastures that reduce the quality of the fodder and reduce the productivity of the fodder and forage in these pastures. There are different agronomic approaches to establish a very successful orchard. We should control, first of all, the bushes. And then pasture establishment should be done after proper tillage. Then legumes can be incorporated, fertilizer. The soil condition should be very good. Then fertilizer application should be done to promote the growth. You should be very careful to enhance the growth of the fodder crop and reduce the growth of the weeds. Then control of the bushes and the other weeds, noxious weeds, is very, very important. So the different types of the highly problematic weeds that grow in our pastures or silesium or ones that it grows as a perennial weed through the underground rhizomes. Then we have the rumex. Rumex is also grows in the orchards floors, is grows in these moist places. It has an underground rhizome, a very thick carrot-like structure, and then it produces a large number of seeds also. So it's a perennial weed spreading, surviving as underground rhizome as well as spreading by the seeds. Then we have the Silesium vulgare, that is the bull thistle. Then we have ragworts, hemlocks. These are different types of the weeds that increase the competition to the forage crops in the pastures, and also reduce the quality of the fodder and sometimes cause the poisoning to the animals. Then, as we discussed, preparing with the proper seed bed, having the optimum plant population of the fodder crop, fertilizing properly, using correct seed rates, choosing high quality fodder varieties, free from the weed seeds, and selecting the suitable varieties that are suitable for that particular region, having the proper sowing dates. For example, in Kashmir Valley conditions, different types of the fodder crops for these pasture grasses, they are generally sown in the month of September when the temperature is good and moisture is also available. Then Rabi fodder crops, for example, berseem and Leucerne, should be sown in the month of October. The date of sowing for the establishment of a forage crop or a pasture is very, very important to enhance the growth of the fodder crop and reduce so that it covers the ground. Then seed rate also should be done as per the recommendations. Overgrazing should be always avoided. Nutrient soil should be subjected to tests for checking the nutrient deficiencies, and harmful pests and pathogens should be controlled so as to give the crop an opportunity to establish. And heavy vehicular traffic and human traffic should be avoided, and animals also should be allowed, should be maintained in a clean way to stop the spread of the different kinds of the weed species. And then there are certain recommendations regarding the habits. The heavy grazing should be stopped, should not be allowed in spring and autumn, because in autumn it goes to the dormancy and will reduce the accumulation of the photosynthesis and food storage in the underground parts of the fodder plants, so that the regrowth during the spring period will be a problem. Similarly, in the spring, if you do overgrazing, then it will enhance, it will weaken the forage crop, and it will give an opportunity for the weeds to emerge. And fertility will selectively stimulate our forage crop, and then increase the sward density. And then for silage, also the stage should be proper to cut the crop so that it has high carbohydrate content that is good for the silage making. Then cultivation is sometimes recommended to destroy the deep-rooted perennial weeds. The different types of the herbicides that are recommended for the pastures are MCPA, then clopyralid, then fluoroper, then we have tricloper. Then among the herbicides are picloram, paraquat, and glyphosate that are definitely used in their dormant conditions, that can be used in active conditions because they are broad spectrum non-selective herbicides. They can be used only in the dormant as a dormant spray like paraquat at the rate of 6.0. Paraquat is used at the rate of 0.6 liters formulation per hectare. It has 25% active ingredient. Then spot spraying should be recommended, because large amounts of when herbicides are applied to the pastures, it can sometimes result in accumulation of the herbicide in the fodder, and then spot application will reduce the requirement of the herbicide. If weeds make up more than 50% of the pasture, then the renovation is very, very, very important. Then that pasture cannot sustain for long. Many products have harvesting, feeding, or grazing restrictions. When we apply herbicide, we should wait for at least for the intermittent period till the residue dissipates inside the fodder plants. And then in established grasslands, when actively growing at rosette stage, the herbicide should be applied at the rosette stage. That is the recommendation for the post-emergence herbicides. Then nowadays, across the world, we are also promoting the organic farming for enhancing the soil health and human health and animal health. And then in that case, the organic fodder production also can be taken up by following the recommendations that are either from IFOM or from other world bodies or from India Organic. There should be appropriate selection of the genotype that has a high growth rate in the initial period. And then fertilization, different fertilizer schedules of the organic fertilizers, and the fertilization from the inorganic fertilizers is not allowed in case of the organic farming production when taken up in the fodder crops. And then ecological measures, crop rotations, intercrops, then we have the certain recommendations are there, organic herbicides, which are not yet much in commercial use. When they come up in the market, then that can be taken up, certain oils, they can be taken up for control of the weeds. Then, so ecological methods, cultural methods, and preventive methods are all the only the options available with us to control the weeds when organic fodder production is taken up. Then these methods will take maybe on the proper tillage. Sometimes the zero tillage or minimum tillage reduces the weed population. Sometimes stale seed bed can be used in the organic farming. Then cover crops. Cover crops reduce the weed seed bank buildup and also enhances the fodder availability. Then intercropping reduces the weed growth between the two crop rows of the main crop. Then thermal control is also being well researched upon in different parts of the world. That is flame or steam, or nowadays the microwaves. Microwaves are also tried at the research level here. Then mulching. Mulching is very, very good tool. Either organic mulch or plastic mulch or soil solarization can also increase the soil temperature even up to 55 to 60 degrees Celsius. That will reduce the weed seeds from the topsoil layer. Then crop genotype that has some allelopathic effect on the weeds can be taken up in the organic farming. Then sowing time and planting. Always the sowing time should be such that should be advantageous to the crop and not to the weed. Then fertilization definitely from the organic sources only. Then it can be farmer manure, it can be compost, it can be vermicompost, or it can be biofertilizers, green manuring. So a large number of options are available. Then irrigation and should be done in such a way to enhance the weed growth. That is the sprinkler and the drip type of irrigation is suitable for the our fodder crops to reduce the water requirement as well as to reduce the growth of the weeds. Then the competition from the other crops, here we have framework showing the mechanisms through which the cover crops may contribute. Cover crops actually cover the soil, give a competition to the weed and reduce the weed seed production and weed populations. Then sometimes the cover crop will have some allelopathic effect on the companion weeds. It can also release some allelochemicals that will reduce the future weed emergence and germination. Then it can also improve the physical soil chemical and biological properties. Thank you very much. So we have taken almost 70 minutes to complete this class. I feel that you might have been benefited by this talk. If the participants are willing to answer, take up some discussion, rather then they are most welcome. Yes, please.
Any questions? Please ask. Thank you, sir. If there are any questions from the person, please ask.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
This is Dr. Ankasham from Karnataka, sir.
Okay. Welcome.
Sir, especially I'm working in the fodder crop, sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm listening to you. Yes. I'm listening to you.
In the perennial grasses, in the early stage, regarding the establishment, from up to early 21 days, we are facing the weed problem, sir.
The establishment. Which one is the crop? Which one is what is the name of the crop?
Hybrid variety, sir. 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 Hybrid variety, s
Name of the crop?
Guinea grass. The initial stages were in the early establishment, we are facing so many problems.
Your voice is breaking, sir.
Can you type the question in the chat box?
Yeah, then you can read it out. Yeah, anyone else?
Anyone else, please ask the question.
Good morning, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dr. Saab. This is Dr. Nisar from Sericulture.
Yeah, welcome, Nisar sir.
Sir, actually, I want to know from you regarding this maize. I want to know in which combination does this maize fit as a best fodder crop? I mean to say as an intercrop. If we want to grow maize as an intercrop so that we can use it later on as a fodder crop, what is the best combination for this maize?
The best combination across the India is maize plus cowpea. Maize plus cowpea. In that case, you even need not to do any weed management practice because the cowpea is vigorous. The maize is also very vigorous. Then it covers the space between the two rows of the maize, and then this cowpea crop is actually a leguminous crop. It has a very high crude protein content. It makes the total fodder as a balanced nutrition for our animals, and it increases the biomass production by around 25 to 30%. Then in Kashmir, we can also take up the soybean. In our Khudwani, we have taken up the sweet corn this year, and we have sown soybean between the rows. The soybean crop, though not generally used, but also is a very safe and good fodder crop. In Western countries, particularly in America, earlier the soybean crop was used as a fodder crop, but later when the oil was extracted from that soybean, then they started to use the soybean as an oilseed crop rather than as a fodder crop. So soybean and cowpea are the two best examples of the intercrop that can be used in maize under Kashmir conditions.
Sir, but what I have been given to understand is the fact that it's an exhaustive crop. So do we have to enter some sort of compromise with the main crop?
Which one is exhaustive?
Maize.
Maize is exhaustive. That's why the recommendations, if you see, it is for the fodder maize, it is 150, 60, and 40. 150 kilograms of nitrogen, and then 60 kilograms of phosphorus, P2O5, and then 30 to 40 kilograms of potash, plus 10 to 15 tons of FIM per hectare. Number one. Number two, if you grow the intercrop will, cowpea will to the great extent fix the atmospheric nitrogen and will enhance the soil health. That is the benefit from these leguminous crops when grown as an intercrop.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
So high doses of fertilizer and organic manure is recommended for fodder. Otherwise, yes, the soil will get exhausted. You're right.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Doctor.
Any other questions, please?
Hello,
I think
good
for the
afternoon, sir.
last 20 days, they have become tired now.
Hello, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Doctor. Yes.
Sir, hello, sir. Myself, Firoz Ahmad from Birsa Agriculture University. I am, sir, PhD scholar. Sir, I want to know, sir, sir, is there any change in quality of fodder while intercropping with tree species?
Okay. You see, if you go for in Kashmir conditions, I have a little bit of experience. We go for on these oats in popular trees. Oats in Punjab conditions, if you see, also they grow in the earlier parts of the earlier phase of this popular tree. They grow wheat. You see, if it gets shaded, if the plant gets shaded, the biomass production will be reduced and water content will be high. But if it is winter and the tree species is deciduous, you are listening to me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. If the tree species deciduous, then during the winter months, the intercrop receives much of the sunshine, and then the yield will not be compromised to that much extent. But definitely, the yield will be lesser if the tree species use shade, much of the shade to the fodder crop that grows in between the rows of a tree. But so far as the quality maybe the if the water content goes very high, then the dry matter yield will also get reduced. It is the yield compromise rather than the quality compromise.
Oh, okay, sir.
Yeah, anybody else?
Any other questions? Participants, any other questions?
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello,
Yeah,
sir.
welcome, sir. Welcome.
How many days? Hello, sir. Myself, Kaka Sahib from Maharashtra.
Sir, your voice is breaking again.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Myself, Kaka Sahib Chavan from Maharashtra.
Yes,
my question is that how much is the waiting period to feed the fodder crop after spraying of weedicides?
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, if we see
How much is the waiting period?
I got. If it is a pre-emergence herbicide, then definitely we have applied it much before of the crop. But if it is a post-emergence applied herbicide, sometimes we apply the atrazine as a post-emergence herbicide. Then it will some of the residue will be present in the fodder crop. That's why we say that we should not apply much of the post-emergence herbicides. Atrazine residues have been reported even in the fodder after the harvest from the Jabalpur, the center of the weed management. I think as reported in the literature, it should be more than 1 month. 1 month should have elapsed since the last herbicide has been applied. Much safer, 45 days to cut a crop when a post-emergence herbicide has been applied to the previous. At least a month should elapse since the last spray.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Sir, I don't think there are any further questions. I think if there are any questions, please ask, or this session is considered concluded.
Okay.
Sir, would like to extend thank you on behalf of NADCL as well as IGFRI and on behalf of the participants. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation, and the insights you provided were great. Thank you, and thank you for this interactive session.
Thank you very much.
All the participants are